We've talked a lot about the food delivery services on the shows over the past few weeks. Big ones would be Skip the Dishes, Uber Eats. And we've talked about the huge commission fees they've charged as well, which I imagine for many restaurants is a huge necessary burden / evil. There's a new delivery service in town, and this is actually the brainchild of a local restaurateur, the man behind Pigeon. His name is Brandon Grossuti. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, guys.
So I found this interesting. I've got a few friends in the restaurant business as well. But before we get to FromTo, your brainchild for a new type of delivery app, let's just kind of set the scene again. We're in the middle of a pandemic, can't go into restaurants. They're slowly opening up now, but you were relying, a lot on these delivery services. Can you actually make a living when they take, 20 or 30% commission on the food fees?
I think in standard brick and mortar kind of sit down restaurants, I think the math is next to impossible. Over time, our industry was already, reeling from some issues around affordability. And I think a lot of the same crunches that we see in, cost of living across the country has also impacted restaurants a great deal. So prior to COVID, brick and mortar restaurants were having a hard time surviving as is. Very slim margins. Those that are doing really well are in the 4% range of profit. And when you then have to basically stop everything that you're doing and switch your entire model to a takeout model and delivery model, you're now those margins completely disappear. So for pretty much everything going out the door, you're sitting at a loss. So we started on this when we started seeing some of our Chinese restaurant friends in like Richmond and different communities having problems in January. So, they've been hit especially hard at the beginning of this, and prior to COVID even being in the country, a lot of patrons and customers were nervous in going to restaurants. And so we saw it. So I started signing these contracts and started looking at it as just a backup plan, just in case, so that we were ready to go. And I knew that they were expensive, but I didn't realize just how prohibitive and how parasitic the relationship was. And so when we switched over and, we closed on the 16th of March, and we were live on the 16th with a couple different apps, ranging between 20 and 30% commissions off gross. And immediately we saw that, obviously we're down in business because our model wasn't set up for takeout and delivery. And we were immediately down, 80%. And then of that, what's left of that, so let's say optimistically 20% of our business, now 20% of our business with all of the fixed costs is now getting nailed on a variable cost of 20 to 30%. 30% gone of 20%, you're just like, oh my God, how are we going to make this work? So even in the point of the contract portion, that's when we started looking at maybe there's a way that restaurants could perhaps cooperatively work together, or we could work together in totality to create a different paradigm here.
So that leads us into FromTo. Explain to our listeners what it's all about and how it works.
Yeah, so FromTo started out with me. Literally, I have a background in software. I used to build architecture, mostly on trading and exchanges worldwide. So like high volume, high throughput systems. And I love to geek out and love to do architecture. So I started to spike it out and, got about 250,000 lines in with some of the stacks that I'd worked with before and some of the architectures that I'd worked with before, but realized very quickly that I needed some partnerships. And so I partnered with two separate companies, and we've created FromTo out of that, one of which did logistics worldwide on the delivery side and has the app system set up and all of that infrastructure. And then the other that is good at front end. So the way that the costing model works, the fee structure, FromTo isn't about making money in this time whatsoever. So we're trying to provide everything at cost. So the driver network is the same as normal. Drivers get paid, they get tipped via the customer. And the restaurant then has the ability to subsidize the driver fee. So let's say on an average drive we're $6 or $6.50 worth of a fee. They can choose to then say, you know what, we'll either subsidize that or not subsidize that. We'll give that directly to the customer, where they'll be charged $6.50 for that delivery, or they'll subsidize it to either a dollar amount or a percentage based on the value. Right now, all of those things are fustigated by these platforms. They don't have control. They're not in charge of their customer. They're not in charge of the fees or how those fees are allocated or shared. It's just done via algorithms, and the restaurant loses the control and the contact with its customer. So we want to remove that relationship, get the customers back in touch with the restaurants, and make it all at cost. The flow through is basically the restaurant is either paying for its subsidy and also paying for the credit card transaction fees at cost from our providers. So it's a flow through model, and the whole aim of this is, we know that especially on the independent restaurant side, we're struggling to a great extent, and it's existential for many of my colleagues and friends that I've known for years. And this was an opportunity to apply a skill set and maybe some opportunity to really, basically create an extended hackathon to get this out. And I'm really proud to say that, with these partners and with what I've done, and a lot of people helping and from all over the world, in 6 weeks we made an end-to-end logistics and e-commerce system that is it's viable. It works all the way through. So it's amazing what you do out of desperation, and what you do when you see so many people around you hurting. It's the least we can do. So, we want to get this, the plan here in Vancouver is to get into geographical regions, like neighborhood by neighborhood, restaurant by restaurant, kind of in pods of 5. And then once we've got that handled, then we get a little bit wider of more restaurants in each neighborhood. And then hopefully by that point, handling most of Vancouver. And then we have our plans for the rest of Canada shortly thereafter, because if we can show capacity and network, we can do it.
We're talking with Brandon Grossuti. He is the restaurateur behind the very successful Vancouver Asian/French fusion restaurant called Pigeon in Gastown. He has developed a new delivery platform called FromTo to compete against the big guys, the Skip the Dishes, the Uber Eats. Brandon, it's very interesting to me because I've looked at Skip the Dishes and Uber Eats, and the crazy amounts of commission they have to charge to the restaurant folks. I just wonder, how sustainable is that in the long term? Like, a lot of these guys aren't even making money, and they're charging these high commission fees. Like, will they be around in a few years? I mean, you can't bankrupt all these restaurants with these high commissions. You got to think that apps like yours, and there must be other ones being
there's lots as well. Yeah, it's funny. I every single time I look at a business model, generally speaking, where you're making your money from is usually what your customer is, and that relationship is actually symbiotic, and one helps the other survive, and one maybe makes the other more successful, and that's what that service is. I think what the weird paradigm and the weird way that Uber and Uber Eats, et cetera, a lot of these systems are set up is it's slightly a little bit more parasitic, where, the model for even these companies, which have lost hundreds of millions of dollars setting this up in customer acquisition and trying to steal the customer from the restaurant and make them the in-between of these two things. They've spent massive amounts of money for acquisition. And then the restaurants are failing as a result as well. And both sides are now losing money. So you get to this thing where it's not a symbiotic relationship, it's truly parasitic, where, to the point that the parasite kills the host and kills the restaurant. So how sustainable is that? One of the wonderful things that you're seeing out of this pandemic, in a weird way, is people are starting to reevaluate our economic systems, the way we take care of ourselves, our families, our neighbors, our local restaurants, our local suppliers. And I have some hope that we have the ability to maybe look at the world a little bit differently and work at the way that we create a more sustainable society. And this is just a small microcosm and the one in which I live in, but it is important to look at this differently.
I was going to say, one of the interesting things that you touched on there was the fact that the pandemic is forcing people to sort of reevaluate things like this. And definitely for me, I don't use the delivery services unless it's a big corporation that aren't going to be suffering from this. But I've chosen to go to the smaller places that, my favorite pizza joint is literally a family operation. It's not a corporation. It's just a small family, and the dad is the driver and he brings the pizza to my house. And a lot of people, and we're seeing this, throughout social media, are buying local, shopping local, eating local in a new way because they're trying to keep their favorites alive. They don't care about the bigger corporate stores or restaurants, but definitely they care about the small guys. And especially challenging, I guess, for operations that you're trying to address is the fact that they don't have an infrastructure. So, a delivery service company like DoorDash or Skip the Dishes sounds like a great idea until you look at how much it costs. And it would literally be cheaper for you to hire a teenager to drive this stuff on a bike.
Yeah. And that model is so different now too. Like, I think the scale on that doesn't work like it used to. So, we've become used to this, like, I want it now kind of culture. And these companies do provide that. And then the logistics around keeping someone, in a city, especially like Vancouver, to have enough order flow inside of one restaurant to be able to logistically support someone at a living wage is next to impossible. And so you have to get to a bit of scale to be able to make this happen. So when we look at launching with the next 6 restaurants that are joining us, we have to have a minimum of 50 drivers signed up. And that's crazy when you think about it. But, they might be working with other applications. They might be working, gigging for DoorDash or another one. And these drivers are doing quite well in this time. Like, it's quite amazing how well this is going. And so the old days of that pizza joint with the kid that's doing the deliveries isn't sustainable with the costs of restaurants now, nor is there enough order flow happening. So you got to everything has to be turned on its head a little bit. And it is really about supporting that place. Like, I went to my dim sum place and, the other day just in my neighborhood, and, I've known these guys for 20 years and it's like, they've watched my kids grow up. They've we've been a part of this restaurant, and you go in there and they're just, they're not technology savvy. They used some of the delivery services for a bit, but it didn't work out. Now they're trying this and they're trying that. And I fear for these restaurants that have been here for, dozens of years, or tens of years. And what is this restaurant landscape going to look like at the end of this? I fear for those families, the first generation immigrant kids, like my wife, when her parents came over from Korea, like, they worked in kitchens. That's how they started. Then they opened a small little diner. And that's how they put her through school. It's frightening. And so, I don't think we're the entirety of this solution, but I want to be a part of it, that we can look at the world and help this out a little bit. And the only regret I have is that we can't do this fast enough. And the need is so great and it's so wide. But we're just, we're basically 3 teams in 5 area codes around the world, or 5 different time zones, pretty much working 24 hours a day with 25 people. And it's not fast enough, but we're getting there. And then there's the legal hoops and all that stuff as well. And we're doing this as fast as we can. And I wish I could do it faster, because it's going to be hard to get to those mom and pop shops and get them signed up quick enough.
Brandon, I want to kind of dig into your brain here right now and just kind of look at this from a bigger picture perspective. Could this be maybe a sign of a transformation or an evolution of the restaurant business overall? When I look at, like digital, like music, for example, we had records and tapes and CDs, and then all of a sudden digital came along and just completely wiped out physical media. And, obviously a lot of people were concerned about all those people that were working in that side, but it just changed because technology changed. And are we looking at maybe something similar for restaurants? Are we looking at more of these ghost kitchens that don't even have a brick and mortar place? They're just, underground in these warehouses making the food. Like, is this just something that is going to happen because, as a society and technology, things have changed?
Yeah, I think you're going to see it. I mean, in North America, I would say we're a little bit behind in that way. You do see that in East Asia, Central and South America more so. Takeout and delivery is more pervasive than eating in a restaurant. I have mixed feelings about ghost kitchens, very mixed feelings, because those ghost kitchens, these big platforms have spent millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars looking at creating warehouses of your recipes made by their people, and you get a royalty on your intellectual property and brand. If you make your own ghost kitchen, then it's like, are you at scale enough to make that work? Can you compete? Can you get low enough? And then it gets away from some of these local things and the way that we provide with local farms and all that. Going back to the original part of that, I think technology, this has forced restaurant industry to look at things very differently, very quickly. We've had to evolve and think on a 15-year scale of things that we were seeing and trends and moving. And, it was like, this was going to get here eventually. And we've compressed that into 2 months. And I think dining changes. I've seen it in my restaurant, especially with kind of like mainland China clientele that are more interested, not necessarily in the ambiance or the restaurant itself or the service or the explanation of service. They would probably be very happy to consume what I have via ordering on their phone and maybe having a QSR at their table and creating a pre-auth limit on their meal, and then just say, yeah, I feel like another one of those, bing. And then they split, they don't even want to talk. And so, maybe might not be able to talk because, language barriers, etc. So, and then to split bill with their friends, they send each other a QR code and Bob's your uncle. I think things are going to change fundamentally. The math was broken from a long time ago. We have to look at things differently. We have to look at the way that we treat our back of house employees, the way that we do tip sharing inside the restaurant, how we do living wage, how we do health benefits and extended benefits. We have a really cool opportunity here to rewrite everything so that it isn't kind of a serf society that we've created inside of restaurants. And always said that it's economically unviable to do X, Y, or Z. Right now, we could change the entire way that this is done, where, unfortunately, it's going to cost more, like it will cost the consumer more, but technology might be able to help in some of those issues. And, there's ways in which we can expedite and create speed in places so that we can pay people better in other ways. But there's in everything, there's an opportunity. But I do fear that opportunity is going to present itself because there's going to be that much more less of us, because restaurants are going to fail, and lots of them.
Brandon, if you had to guess, and you made some really interesting points, like the pandemic has compressed the amount of time it's going to take to make all these changes. There's no doubt in my mind that a good chunk of restaurants are going to fail in this time period. Like, if you had to guess, like, is that 5, 10, 20, 25%?
I think it all depends on how we deal with this over the course of the next few months. I'd say where we are in BC right now, we've been lucky, I would say. And I say luck because I think other countries have done more around tracking and social distancing and contracting and technology and, ankle bracelets, for Christ's sakes, like things like that. Like there's things that they have done where they're attacking this in a multi-pronged approach, not just for public safety, but to build consumer confidence. And I don't think the things that we have done here make me feel comfortable about what this looks like long-term from a consumer confidence perspective. And this is really a psychological game more than anything else as well. There's a health crisis, but there's also the psychology of what's happening to our society. And if this comes and hits again, so right now we're gradually reopening, but if this, as predicted, the second wave, et cetera, and, looking at history, what the second wave of the Spanish flu did, I think right now we're looking at about 10 to 15% of restaurants not making it through this summer. And then if we get that second hit in fall and winter, I'd say that number is closer to 50, if not 60.
That is significant.
Yeah, the service sector itself in Canada, I think, is about 1.2 or 1.4 million jobs. Right now, we're at, I think, 900,000 people unemployed in my industry. Now, that works great when CERB is going and a bunch of these systems are going. But when that stops, because we are gradually reopening, and then it comes again, you're talking about decimation. You're talking about, and then within that 1.2, 1.4 million people, let's talk about all the industries on the secondary and tertiary support levels of this. Drivers that bring food to the restaurants, the foragers, the farmers, the fishers, the local beef, etc. The ripple effects of this through the economy are insane, and the amount of jobs lost and the amount of families struggling. This just it boggles my mind, and it's frightening. And so I'm worried about where we are right now, and I'm worried about people making it through, and those are kind of the numbers I see. But I just think if this happens again and we're not really prepped for it, and we don't have the technology behind it, and we don't have some of the other pronged approaches that these other countries are doing, we're going to be in for it. And unfortunately, I think that's going to really affect our industry more than anything, because we are in some way the last to come back on and the first to be taken out. And so, and then the confidence to create that, to get back to normal, like sitting at 20% capacity, 50% capacity, those numbers don't make sense, even if things are great. You have to rewrite your whole business model to get yourself into, 50% capacity, because we don't make money at 50% capacity. It's next to impossible to operate. So
Brandon, what are you going to do? Your app is great. That's going to take a while to get going. In the meantime, you're getting chunked 20 to 30% commission from the current delivery services. And if your restaurant can only hold 50% of the people, if you're lucky, how long can you survive?
We're trying to strive to get to zero right now. That's my biggest goal. We've, I believe, raised a lot of awareness with our people and with our customer base that are amazing, to do takeout, to do FromTo, to be able to use those services so that we can lower the cost. So the education on the customer side is one aspect of this approach. When we finally do look at reopening and what that looks like, we are actually working on a hybrid model, which is basically Friday, Saturdays. We're going to do, so we're a 99 capacity room. We're going to do 20 to 25 people, and we're going to do one seating. And it's going to be a set dinner with all of our suppliers, our local suppliers and local wineries, and the people that we love and know their families and want to make sure that they are successful as well. And that's it. It'll be a set dinner twice a week, and we'll hybrid it. And that is how I think I achieve how I achieve existence, not profit, but how I achieve zero, and also keep my kitchen inspired, my customers excited about what we're doing, and also in whatever small way that we can help our suppliers, get their beautiful products out. And so that's the approach that we looked at. We've already put out a news release talking about how that looks. People can pre-purchase tickets now for these events. We're calling them like week 1, day 1, week 1, day 2, because we haven't picked the date yet. None of us feel super comfortable of opening up right now. And so when we feel comfortable, we're going to open up. And, at my house, I have someone that's immune compromised. My chef lives, his mom is quite a bit older. We want to make this where we feel confident and comfortable of accepting people into our restaurant and into, our family, because we're immediately extending our social circle quite a bit, and our risk. And we want to make sure that that's mitigated. Like there's going to be a lot of things around the way that the protocol works when you come in. Signing a contract, being able to do contact tracing, saying that someone in the party is responsible for the rest of the party. So that if something does happen, we can find you and we can find them, or the government can. There's going to have to be things that I think restaurants are going to have to do, or even retail shops, that have to lead by example. Even though it's not government mandated, I think we need to do things that make this so that there's social confidence and there's consumer confidence in the way that we're structuring society, at least for the next year.
And I just want to, kind of wind this interview down here, but you just brought up an interesting point, and it almost made me think of the music industry again. With the artists back in the day, they would make all their money off the royalties from their records and CDs and what have you. That kind of just disappeared when it went to digital. They are making a bit of money on streaming now, but all their money is in concerts and concert events. You're almost kind of like the same there. Like you're going to have these Friday, Saturday, one seating events, and put all your, I guess, advertising and marketing around that, and then maybe hopefully do some of the order business during the week, kind of like your streaming revenue. Is that kind of a fair comparison?
We are, and the weird thing, we are an entertainment business in some way, shape, or form. And I know people in the music industry that are just absolutely struggling right now. And you have to come up with a hybrid model that makes sense. You got to be super creative right now, or you're not going to make it. We with FromTo, the way that we've looked at, we have a platform now for logistics and for product purchasing, which is kind of cool. Like, we have an opportunity to be creative and say, okay, you know what? We have this beautiful sauce that we want to bottle and sell. We have this beautiful, we have these suppliers that create these plates from the Sunshine Coast. Let's sell some plates.
That's like your t-shirt store at the concert.
There is. And I think you have to diversify right now more than anything. You have to diversify your revenue stream, because if you're just depending on dine-in restaurant and dine-in customers right now, you are rolling the dice on your business completely. And so the hybrid model is really the only way that I see it going. There's a retail portion, there's a dine-in portion, there's a takeout portion, and there's a delivery portion. And once those habits form, takeout, delivery, etc., and people start working that way, making people reverse habits that they've created. Like, imagine if they took away, I'm not a big Amazon supporter, but for a lot of people, that's lifeblood. Imagine if you said, yeah, you don't order this way anymore. And I think
that would hurt.
Yeah. And it's like, once that habit forms, reversing that habit and reversing that consumer, I guess it's just consumer habits, reversing that trend back to a different model isn't going to happen. It's going to be a hybrid approach no matter what moving forward. So we have looked at the model of the menu that we have right now is not our normal menu. So maybe that menu does go out of a small space in 600 square feet in Richmond and gets delivered from there. We've looked at different ways of doing this, and then Pigeon is this beautiful seated experience for the things where we can flex our culinary muscle.
We're talking with Brandon Grossuti. He is the man behind the successful Pigeon restaurant in Vancouver. He's developed a new delivery app, a more sustainable one that works for restaurants, FromTo, and hopefully we'll see that rolling out to many, many more neighborhoods and cities across Canada. Brandon, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, guys. Really appreciate it.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Just hit that notification button to be notified about our next show.